Hello YouTube, welcome to my book review channel. Even though this is the first video, I'm not covering a book. Instead, we're going to delve into the anime Hunter x Hunter. While watching the show, I realized something amazing about writing and wanted to point it out in case others found it interesting as well. Spoiler warning, we'll be covering Hunter x Hunter up until the Chimera Ant Arc. To give a bit of understanding of how I'll be analyzing this, I'll be delving into the arcs in which a writing element such as writing style, setting, world building, or the like grabbed my attention. My analysis is based on speculation since it's following the hand of the author. This refers to the reason why an author chooses certain writing elements and why the author decides to weave them together in the way that he or she does. I'm not going to go over every single arc, just the arcs in which a writing element stood out. So we're going to begin with the Hunter exam arc. Based on the writing style, which is expressed as dialogue due to the medium, the intended audience appears to be very young. I'm talking slightly older than the Dora the Explorer audience. The story just goes too far into explaining certain things.
That's it. Their foreheads are their weak spot.
I see. That makes sense. They developed tough snouts to protect their delicate foreheads.
On top of that, the exam was supposed to be so brutal that people could die during them. The people overseeing the exams, referred to as examiners, warned the participants but never went out of their way to keep them safe. So it's almost like the writing wants to set up these super dangerous situations where anyone could die. But when those deaths happen, the writing completely ignores the natural gravity of the situation.
The updrafts don't happen all the time.
Huh? When do you think the next one comes along?
Any minute now.
So I guess we can't climb down. Not this way, at least.
Yeah.
This results in tension being removed from the experience. So both the over-explaining and the way they treat what should be really heavy moments work together to make me feel that this show is just too young for me. To be clear, I'm not saying this show can't be enjoyed by adults. I'm merely saying why I thought the show wasn't for me at first. My overall review for this arc is, well, it was cute. The writing's good, the character's interesting and fun, and, well, it was cute. Now we move on to the Phantom Troupe arc. The writing style made sense to me until this arc began. So just to take a step back and explain, this is how the speculation's going to work. The more information I get from the show, the more I adjust what I think the author is trying to do. So for this arc, the themes and ideas explored suddenly became too heavy and complex for an audience as young as I believe they were. By all means, we shouldn't treat children like morons, but there's a difference between writing plot lines that respects the audience's intelligence and writing straight up nightmare fuel. While an interesting mix, it doesn't work on a writing level. The people old enough to handle the visuals and heavy themes shouldn't be spoken to as though they're children. And children shouldn't be shown such visuals, at least not if you want them to sleep through the night. To be clear, a lot of anime over-explains things, so this appears to be a cultural difference. If I'm going to be honest, I kind of enjoyed the oddity of the mix. I mean, imagining children watching some of the things that Kurapika was doing is kind of amusing. Another thing of note for the Phantom Troupe arc is that the world building expanded by showing everyone forms a close bond to someone. Normally, there's a baseline used for human characters, and generally speaking, it's what the author understands at the time. Right now, it's generally understood that people who are not only willing to kill others, but also get joy from it, tend to not have the empathy or sympathy to form healthy relationships with others.
Come on, give us the order, boss. I want it now.
I give you permission to kill them all. Anyone who dares to get in our way.
However, this isn't the case in the Hunter x Hunter verse. The Phantom Troupe are ruthless, so their close bond with one another really stands out. And yes, when Krollo was captured, many of the troupe wanted to leave him behind as they'd previously agreed, but when it mattered, they showed how close they were by allowing Paku to attempt the exchange.
Their rules are ironclad, and their boss accepts them without question. But what about the others? This one appears to be different. This woman whom you despise with your whole being is driven, certainly, but by the very same motive that drives you. She wishes to save her boss, to save her friend.
And when she came back and they didn't know if she had been compromised, they were still willing to trust her.
Paku, you're not...
Hey, don't tell me you're being controlled
Be
by...
quiet! It's Paku. You can trust her.
All my memories. My heart and soul. I give you everything. Please, let me be the last.
This observation isn't a negative. Although the characters are referred to as human, it's made clear from the very beginning that they aren't human in the way we understand. So having these humans have a stronger need for an emotional connection is perfectly valid. Writers can create whatever world they want so long as the characters interact with the world accordingly. All in all, this arc is my second favorite next to the Chimera Ant Arc. Now, we move to the arc that literally, figuratively, blew my mind. This arc renewed my interest with the creepiness and outright mind-bogglingly dark scenes. For my analysis, I need to dig a little deeper into the technical side of writing. The author's job is to guide the audience through their creation. The author chooses what to highlight as important, which dots to connect, which emotions the audience should feel at any given moment, as well as other things. As an example, if the writer wants the audience to feel a heightened sense of happiness, then they may depict a sad scene shortly before. Then when the audience gets to the happy moment, by comparison, the moment will feel that much stronger. So now that that's explained, let's look at this royally effed up moment. When the little boy saves his sister from a snake, he's commended by his mom. His pride is high. His sister, who already saw him as a hero, gushes at how strong and awesome he is. And then the next scene with them in it, the writer pits this poor boy against a creature far too powerful for him to defeat. Keep in mind that for the writer to guide the audience to sadness, the first scene isn't necessary. These children could have been playing out by the river when the ant shows up, and the audience would naturally feel sadness and shock. The previous scene was crafted to heighten the sense of loss and sadness for both the children and their mother. I do understand this is Colt, and the experience is meant to set up Colt's need to protect the queen, but I argue that isn't necessary because they're ants. I mean, Colt could have been gung-ho, protect the queen mentality from the ant side of his DNA. They naturally have a hierarchy already set up. And this is depicted with the royal guards. But for some reason, the author wanted this poor boy to get a great boost to his ego, so he feels like he has to protect his sister, only to have them both being captured and killed and eaten.
The best fodder.
On a technical level, it's a bit heavy-handed for my taste, but as a viewer, it was so messed up that I loved it. Another technical choice that stood out in this arc is how meticulously the thoughts and logic of more characters were laid out. Now, the show has been doing this from the first arc, but with this arc, it felt like the number of characters doing this tripled.
You mean we've committed, you son of a bitch? Huh? But I get it. Business is business.
One word. The message for the king.
I'm not going to send my satellite dragonflies, because if the enemy sees them flying about inside the cave, they will get suspicious.
It slowed down the pacing a bit, but at this point I was convinced that the decision was to allow the audience to easily follow along with the plot while enjoying the artwork. I'm not as adept at analyzing visual art, but the show frequently spends longer than necessary on a single visual. And the shapes, colors, and composition of the images all look interesting and cool, at least to me. To provide a bit more detail on this technical choice, the rules of writing are important because when they're understood, the writer knows when and how to break the rules. It's a loss versus gain scenario where a rule is broken only if what's gained is worth it. The slowing of the plot by having characters over-explain their thought process has the benefit of allowing the audience to take in and enjoy the visuals while not losing the plot. In essence, the primary reason for the show is the artwork, the secondary is the story. Now, I no longer believe this was the author's intent. However, while I did believe it, I could appreciate the choice. When considering loss versus gain, slowing the plot is an option as well as dumbing down the plot. But slowing the plot is the more worthwhile choice. Now we can fast forward a bit to when Meruem was born. And I'm going to say that I know I'm mispronouncing his name, but Meruem feels way more natural, so you're just going to have to deal. The choices for this character seem so clear to me at this point. I mean, he's so devoid of emotions that he couldn't even care less that his mom was dying. I don't even think he looked at her twice. He appeared to be a flat character, evil just because. These types of characters don't bother me. I mean, I was more interested in how much Gon would grow so that he could defeat Meruem, especially when Meruem followed in his mother's footsteps and consumed a child.
It isn't bad. Still, it's not at all worth eating.
At this point, I was thinking, show him rock, Bone, show him rock. I seriously could not wait for this ant to be destroyed. To go back to pacing for just a little bit, I think that the slower pace bothered me more in this arc because I was so eager to see Gon grow enough to beat Meruem, but the show seemed to have them on two different plot points. My frustration only grew when they brought in the OG Netero. They started an epic battle, and then the writer took a step back to delve deeper into Netero's history. I was ready to tear my hair out, and I lost a lot of respect for the writing because of this. I mean, it felt like toying with the audience. Then, fast forward to after the battle, after Meruem's return up to Wilfin's single word.
Velma Key.
And it all became clear to me. I mean, let's just take a moment to appreciate how gloriously massive the kahunas of anyone who attempts a redemption arc for such a depraved character as this.
Merely finding and consuming them is not entertaining. I enjoy the moments before it's clear if the human is rare or not. But I have alleviated my hunger.
And now let's appreciate how much more massive the skill level must be to actually pull it off. So the biggest problem with this type of redemption arc is that the audience's need for justice would be so overwhelming that the idea of forgiveness wouldn't even enter their minds. If it's not handled well, the audience would reject the resolution and hate the story with a passion. I want to take another step back now from the main focus to analyze how and why this redemption arc is so successful, because it really could be used to teach a writing class. The narrator outright states in one episode that Meruem's change was actually there all the time. Even still, I couldn't fully understand the implications at that point because his changes were so natural and gradual. Even when Meruem fights Netero, he tells Netero several times that he won't repeat himself, but he never actually attacks until he's taunted with his name. It's in seeing every single time he says and does this, when you lay it out, it's easy to see the change over time.
Don't make me repeat myself.
Just so happened to have my trusty handkerchief with me.
I won't say it again. Do not make me repeat myself. I won't say it again. Now move.
I will not. If you still wish to kill me, do it. Hingungi.
You little... Don't follow me.
But, sire...
I said it once. I will not repeat myself. Wake up. Can't you see words are all that you and I will exchange here? You should save your energy.
But as it's happening during the run of the show, it's gradual and over a long enough period of time that it gives the audience time to adjust to the slightly better version of himself. And it's brilliantly done. In addition to the slow change that the writer has Meruem go through, Poluki? Alright, so I'm gonna mispronounce her name, but this one is, I don't know why I struggle so much, so feel free to be mad at me about this one. Her character offers a good counter to Meruem's cruel mentality with how sweet and kind she is. It's when she shows up that he starts softening a lot faster than before. As a side note, I kept waiting for her to be revealed as a super powerful hunter who had infiltrated the ants, since she seemed way too sweet and simple, but turns out she really is just that. Another thing the author did to help smooth out this transition is that he connected the obvious changes to Meruem to the world building so that it made sense. For example, after Meruem is revived, he makes a comment about him being connected to Yuppie and Poof, making it reasonable that he didn't immediately kill them when he suspected that they were lying to him.
Our relationships have become quite complex. It seems that our bodies and souls have become intertwined. And as a result of this fact, there can be no more secrets between us.
I mean, if we go back to the old Meruem, I doubt they could have even gotten half a lie out before he destroyed them.
By the way, Pito, you are quite strong indeed. I intended to kill you with that blow.
But here he is, essentially begging them to be honest with him. So what happens is that these in-world reasons for Meruem's wildly contradictory decisions, which deflect suspicion of him internally changing, preserve suspicion of disbelief. They also slowly lead the audience away from the need for justice, and it makes it easier for them to accept his redemption in the end. It wasn't until he passed Rolfen by that I realized he truly was a different person. He even worked against his royal guards by lying to them, which interfered with their ability to protect him. He betrayed himself in this sense because his change was so drastic. And even when it was clear that he was working against his own well-being by not telling the guards what happened to him, this was because he'd lost his memory. So even that decision has an in-world reason. And I want to make my point clear on this one. He wasn't doing all of this for himself. I mean, he's the most powerful being on the face of the planet. He could straight up have told them, we're no longer killing humans. Instead, we're going to treat them as equals. And what the heck were they going to do about it? He wasn't lying for his sake. He was lying for their sake. Because he'd lost his memory, he didn't know the best decision to make. He'd started off killing indiscriminately just because he felt like it. And he ends up working to protect others. A complete 180. Now that we see how well done the redemption arc was, we can now analyze the effect it had on the audience. We've been following characters who had experienced so much turmoil, considering how much the Ants had taken from them. But in the end, we see them not get what they want.
Kilo, I'm sorry. I wanted to, but I couldn't keep our promise.
Instead, the villain is rewarded. And it's a wonderful end, despite what would normally be expected. I had wanted so badly to see Meruem destroyed, but instead was brought to near tears and overwhelming happiness when he got the one thing he wanted. Side note, I'm broken, so near tears is quite impressive. I didn't even consider the chance of his character changing because of how the writer chose to introduce him. I mean, the kahunas! I'd never expect any competent writer to attempt this. While this redemption arc is really fascinating and well executed, it isn't the part that blew my mind. To better explain that part, I need to provide a visual. Normally, a series has a different overarching story each season, so each season would be considered a work in and of itself, just set in the same universe with similar or the same characters. It's not like a book where it's one solid story. When a single story is written, the different components crisscross, effectively creating a tapestry which represents the entire work. For this series, however, up to this point, it could be considered a single piece of work, except instead of the tapestry, the different elements come together in a unique way. So this is where the heavy speculation comes into play. But I'm not saying that this is what the author had in mind. Instead, I'm saying that speculating on the hand of the author for this show led me to realize that there's another way to design a story. In this example, we're going to look at the series from the beginning up to when Meruem and Komugi enjoy one another's company for the last time. So if we have that story in mind and we look at the hand of the author, what we find is that the over-explaining allows the audience to get to know the characters that much more deeply. Seeing their thought process, knowing without a doubt their aspirations and fears. While this may sound like a reach, I'd like to point out that we find out way more than we need to know about some of these characters.
I wanted to be reborn as a squid, and my favorite was the breathtaking whiplash squid.
This links the writing style directly to the theme of creating a close connection with others, which would be an aspect of world building. In other words, the way the characters over-explain their thoughts is not only writing style, but it's also world building. The elements meld together rather than staying completely separate and only crisscrossing at certain points. Through the theme, the world building connects to the creation of the ultimate enemy, which is character. Without the human's strong need for a connection, Meruem's redemption arc becomes impossible to pull off. It took time, but this strong need to connect to others that the humans in this world have is what subdued the most powerful creature on their planet. Now, and even though it's a series, it would still be considered a single piece of work since, like with guiding the audience through emotions, the previous seasons and subsequent setup for the next season are all there to set up a contrast with that single moment. I mean, all of our favorite characters are all important. Good night, there's a Gigagon. Of course it's important to figure out what happened. However, they could never mean more than this moment. The very shape of the story would connect to the plot. Every time the characters became stronger, every loss, every win would be for the sole purpose of positioning this moment as the most important thing. Even the decision to interrupt an epic battle with Netero's backstory fits into the design, since the end is an emotional one. So having emotional scenes balanced with the battles would help prevent the ending from feeling out of place and unnatural. Everything would culminate in this single moment, further heightening it, making it literally more important than anything else, effectively expressing what these two are feeling. Many might find ending the series here disappointing. However, the simple fact that this design is so unique would make ending it mid-storyline absolutely worthwhile, and I'm taking into consideration Gigagon here. We discussed once before that breaking the rules can be done if what's lost is worth what's gained. I can't think of a better scenario in which the biggest rule of writing is broken, not resolving the main plot line. If the show ended where I wished it had, there was a resolution with the current arc, so there's satisfaction in that, and it wouldn't feel as so much of a betrayal. The breaking of this rule would be the cherry on top of the single best written work of art I've ever experienced. Now, I'm only one person, and I could never experience even a fraction of the stories out there, but I've experienced a ton, and I've never seen a story designed like this. Never even knew it was possible. I had only seen, and therefore expected, the tapestry design. Seeing this, I can't even fully explain how amazing it is, but maybe this would help. Those student loans I'll never pay off, they're now worth it. But the fact that the series continues means that this does not represent that masterpiece. And I want to be clear, the show is good. It was a little bumpy in the beginning, but I wound up absolutely loving it. So I understand what it is. It's just the realization of what it could have been. It seems almost like lightning strike to design a different story like this. I mean, the fact that these characters have this whole close connection to one another, that's a thing in a story with the creature as powerful as Meruem. How do you get these two elements to organically come together in another story in which a single scene is the main focus, the crown of the story itself? It would be damn near impossible. I feel like I'm not even making sense right now, so I'm going to stop nerding out. Instead, I'll say thank you for checking out my channel. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening.